All right, guys, in today's video, we're working on a 2022 Audi SQ5, and what we're interested in is this message on the screen that says inspection due. So what that message is, that's not for the oil and filter change. That particular message has to do with maintenance that's required. And so if I go in and pop the VIN into the Audi system online, I find out that what it's really trying to say is there's 40,000 mile maintenance is due based on the age and mileage of this particular SQ5. And what they want you to do at that point is replace the dust and pollen filter, so the cabin air filter. They want you to, if you have this panorama sunroof system, they want you to check the drainage system to make sure that it's working. And then they want you to replace the spark plugs. What we're going to be doing in today's video is doing the spark plugs, which for this model Audi, they recommend be done every 40,000 miles or 6 years, whichever occurs first. This message, I want to tell you something about this message. Let me get it back up on the screen here. So this message can't be cleared from the vehicle system. You can't clear it yourself. This requires either going to the dealer or having a scan tool. So I'm going to show you how to clear it with a scan tool. But let's go ahead and get under the hood and get started. All right, what we're looking at under the hood here is a V6 3-liter TFSI. And to get started, we're going to take the engine cover off. This engine's still a little bit hot, so this will help let it get cooled down so we can do this procedure. We're going to remove the oil filler cap as part of that, and then this guy should just unsnap from the corners. There's a couple of studs here and over in the back. And you can see those here, 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 and there's one right over here. That's what holds this cover on. And just so we don't get any debris inside of the engine, we'll put this back on. And then our coils for this guy are going to be sitting here, here, and right back there. And then on the passenger side, we get a really good view of the coil that's sitting right here. There's another one right here. And then there's another one underneath this duct. So in order to get access to pull the coils so we can get to the spark plugs, we're going to have to remove some of this obstruction. So while the engine's still cooling down, let's take a look at the service manual and see what we have to pull to get access. All right, we'll start on the passenger side since that's where we've got easier access. This little piece of air ducting we're going to remove first. I'm just going to open up these two clamps with a slotted screwdriver. You could also use a socket if you chose. This guy right here. Let's see how much we need to do to get it to let go. Okay, there's that end. Let's give this guy a little bit more. All right, that out of the way. Now we can see this coil extremely clearly. We can partially see this one. To get to this guy, we've got to get this wire carrier out of the way. So it looks like it's sitting on a couple of studs, maybe. We'll have to take a look at the service manual and confirm for sure. But that's kind of like what it looks like. So let's take a look at the service manual and see if this kind of casting, if we zoom in here where my finger is, right? It looks like we've got this kind of boss here that's sitting underneath, so it's probably, pushed down and snapped onto that. And then there's a similar one right here. You guys can't see because there's so much here, but I'm touching a similar casting on the head here. So let's go ahead and see how this guy pops off. Once we can get this out of the way, we got 1, 2, 3 that we can remove and do. All right, it looks like a similar type of ball stud that we had holding the engine cover is what's on the top of that little boss here. So it should be such that if we get our two fingers underneath, if we zoom in here, this little round piece, if you feel on it, it's like rubber. If we put 2 fingers in here and pull up on it, there it is. Yep, it's the same kind of deal. It's a little, kind of a little ball stud deal. All right, so we got this pipe in the way on this one, so it's going to be harder to get your finger in here, but it should be the same mechanism. Okay, yep. So you can see right there if we zoom in, right, it's the same kind of little ball stud deal. All right, so now we got this guy disconnected. We need to get him removed. So we can take this wire out of this retainer. And let's see what all we got to disconnect here. We would not have to do anything other than disconnect the coil here, and we would be in business. For this one here, we're probably okay as well. So it's just this one. So on this one, let me go ahead and get this piece going and see if it helps us. So if we zoom in here, we've got a little safety kind of retaining lock. So we're just going to use this little mini pry bar to pull that all the way out on each one of these. All right, all 3 of those, and that should allow us to squeeze this down and remove the connector to the coil. There's 1. There's 2. And what I'm doing here, just so you can see, right, I'm pressing on this black piece right here. And then just kind of giving it a wiggle. All right, so we got all that out. Better, but still not good enough. Let's see. So if we wanted to disconnect this, we've got a sensor connection here. We've got a sensor connection here. We got a sensor connection here. All right, let's try removing. Let's see what we got here. We got 1, we got 2. Is that going to help us? No, that's not going to help us because this snakes in behind the engine here. All right, guys, give me a second to figure this out. We'll come back. Just want to all we need to do to get to these 3 coils is figure out how to get this obstruction out of our way. All right, so just taking a quick look at the service manual. It's as good a time as any to take that detour. We already removed this engine cover. It's like it was worth showing this because there are 2 different versions of this depending on which one you have. You know, it's going to be kind of similar. We had version 1. And then we were on removing the ignition coils, and we had just removed this piece of ducting. So you guys already saw me do that. And then we were looking to get access to the 1, 2, and 3 ignition coils, right? And so they were walking us through some connections that they would recommend you disconnect. We already did the ignition coils here, here, and here, and we got this pulled off of these ball studs. In fact, let me just kind of go back here real quick, right? I think I saw somewhere here where yeah, here it is. They talk about that being a ball pin and push type connection. So we got that. So now what they're going to end up doing is what I was suspecting. We're going to have to follow this harness, disconnect this sensor here. This sensor, if we zoom in down here, there's another one right there. We're going to have to disconnect this one and this one. And then all the way in the back here, I get where you guys can see. If you come in more on this side, you can see where my fingers are. There's a sensor right under this pipe. You guys are, it's right, I'm just rubbing it. It's right in the back of the engine. And so if you don't see it, you'll get another shot at it when we take it off. And then if we come back over here by the ignition coils, it's a huge production on this model. Each of the coil connectors, find some metal to put this light, each of the coil connectors has a little ground wire. Right? This is the easiest one to see. And we have to follow these 3 ground wires down to where they're attached with a bolt to the engine cylinder head. And so if we go back to the manual, we see that here. So we can see these removing of bolts 4 and free up the ground wire. So 1, 2, and 3 are the bolts holding these little wires that you see coming off the coil connectors. So to get this blue duct, this wiring duct, out of our way to access the middle coil here, the number 2 coil, we've got to disconnect the ignition coil connectors. We've got to pop this off these 2 rubber ball studs. We've got to remove these 3 bolts so that we don't have these ground wires holding this. We've got to disconnect this sensor that's all the way in the back. This sensor, they don't number it, but also this sensor. And then they told you on the previous page there were 2 other sensors. So a lot to disconnect just so that we can lift this out of the way to get access to this coil. We got access to this one, and we got access to this one, but we can't get this one without getting this to where we can kind of flip it over. So that'll be the next step. And what you're going to have to do, get the light here where it's nice, and we zoom in here. So this is a different style of locking clip. So you're going to take a small pry bar and you're going to get it underneath this little red lip. And you're going to be very gentle because you don't want to break it. And you're going to wedge this in here. Come on. There he goes. He's very gentle and very patient. There he goes. He's going to move, and he's not going to break. There he goes. So this style of lock is used on the one down here. You see him right there. And the one in the back. And once we push that up like that, then we can push this black release lever in. And get this connector off. Although it's super awkward, right? We got this pump in the way. Gonna have to find another way I can get in here and give this a push, but that's the general idea. So let me get these safeties released on all 3 of these, and then I'll show you how you have to fight to give them a squeeze, and then we'll go after those ground bolts. All right, to make it a little easier to get these connectors off, I'm just going to give them a little dousing with some CRC silicone spray. This is super plastic safe and it won't hurt anything, but what we want to try and do is get it to where these safeties are less finicky. So I don't want to be worried about breaking them every time we try to come in here. And of course this one is still not cooperating. Let's see if we can get this one to show some new cooperation. There we go. Right. Up, down, up, down, up. All right, so that one's kind of freed up. This guy's still not freed up. You got to be patient, people, because you don't want to break it, and it is plastic. Actually, I didn't realize I already had it up, so this one's freed up as well. My bad. All right, so both these are freed up. This same style connector is used on this one, and the one in the back. It looks like in the previous clip, we didn't get a really good view of the one in the back, so I'll give you another shot of that in a minute. But how do they work? Well, the way they work is with this red lock out of the way. I'm going to give it some pressure on the back so we don't strain the connector. You can push this black piece in, just like that. And you can hear the little latch inside. You'll feel it. It's giving away. And so to get this off, what we're going to want to do is push this in while we pull it. So push it till you feel that latch. Come on, don't make me a liar. And then it'll come off just like that. It is a pisser. It's a super tight fit because there's this waterproof grommet inside that, has not had any lubrication since the assembly line, so it's going to be super tight fit. And pull this other one off the same way. And this engine is still a little hot, especially this pump here. Come on. What I think I might have to do is get something down here where I can give it a little bit of upward pressure while pushing that in. I don't know if my finger is enough for that. Nope, it's not enough. All right, I got to figure out how we can get in here with this pump in our way, and then I'll show you the one in the back. It's just a very awkward location for the connectors, and they're very tight and finicky to begin with. All right, guys, if you zoom in here, I couldn't get this on camera because it ended up having to get some help from the person filming with me. But while I got up here and pushed this in, I had them come down and just twist this screwdriver right like that against the housing of this sensor very gently, and that was enough to coax this guy loose. And again, if you look down in the body of this, you can see that same orange weather seal, and that's what's grabbing on the inside of these sensor housings. All right, we got one more in the back. No way I'm going to have you be able to see taking it off, but I do want you to see that. Let me find a place for the camera that's better than before and get the flashlight on it. All right, so now if we zoom into this last sensor way here in the back, you can see just the very end of that red latch there. So you got to reach around, unlatch it just like the first two I showed you, give the black piece a squeeze, and work it off. That's the third and last one you got to disconnect. All right, so we got this guy disconnected. We got this guy in the back disconnected. And we got this lower one disconnected. But we still can't pull this harness out of the way because we've got these ground wires. If we come around over on this edge here, a little bit on the front, these ground wires that are attached to the coil connectors that are then mounted with a T30 Torx bolt to the engine. We got to get at least two of these disconnected. This one is harder to see, so I'm going to show you the one on the middle coil. If we look right down here, right where the flashlight is, let me try to get it where you guys don't see the glare. Yeah, come on, nothing, everything's plastic, nothing to mount this on. All right, so this guy right here, this T30, is just obscured by this connector, has got the ground line for the middle ignition coil attached to it. Now if we slide over a little bit towards the firewall, might get a better view of it, and then we re-zoom back in. And zoom back in here. There you go. Now you can see it. That little guy right there, we got to get off to remove this wire. I can't get you guys filmed in while I'm taking it off, but I'll show you what it looks like after we get it out. All right. I got this guy loosened up. And I'm just trying to get it off with my hand here because I don't want to drop it. This job's already taken way longer than it should just to change spark plugs. Last thing I need to do is go hunt for a special fastener. Okay, almost. God, this is a long screw, but this is our guy, and attached to the end of him is this ground. And when you put these grounds back on, they've got to remain in this position on the engine, not this position, not this position, this position. So we're going to take the other two off that I can't get the camera in, and then we should be able to get this harness out of the way. All right, with that one out of the way, now we've got, looks like this connector down here. One more before we can pull this harness out of the way. So let me see if I can get the camera where I can show you that one. That should be the last one where we can flip this out of the way and get access to these three ignition coils. All right, so we got this one off. So if you zoom in, You can see this is a different style of connector that we were trying to get off this little sensor right here. And it's easier for me to show you with a different sensor. So if we zoom out and come over here to the front, the lock on that, if we zoom in a little bit, is just like the lock on this one. And so you have to raise this up. And yes, it doesn't want to cooperate, just like the one down there. I ended up giving it a little bit of this. There we go. And once you get the lock out, if you squeeze down on the lock, that's what releases this style of connector. And then that locks it back. So that's that one. And there is yet one more still to go before we can get this harness to let go. So let me see if I can figure out how to get you a shot of that one. All right, so this last connector, I think you probably can only really easily access it from underneath the vehicle. I wish it had been more obvious in the service manual. I'm going to try to get away with not chasing that one. We've obviously got a clear shot. If we zoom out, we've got a clear shot to this coil here in order to get to the plug. And if we come over on this side, on the front, we've got a clear shot to this one. It's this middle one that's obstructed. So what I'm going to try to do is just free up some connectors up here. So I'm going to take this connector for this sensor off and the one over here for this sensor. Right? This guy and this guy. And we're going to see if that, along with this one down here, gives us an ability to get our hand in here and get this coil out. I've never seen such a difficult spark plug repair maintenance service as this, but it is what it is. All right, we're going to go after this first coil. If we go over here, right, I disconnected these additional two sensors to give us a little bit more slack in this harness. We're going to come in here with a T30, and we're going to remove this retaining bolt for this first coil. Come on. Don't really have any room to get anything else in here. This is obviously a super long fastener. And it is. Right. Now they tell you to use a coil puller for this. That's probably what we're going to have to do. I'm going to go ahead and grab the one on the front here because these are the two that we can get at fairly easily on this side. We're just a little bit cocked with the air cleaner housing. This is something else they would have told you in the service manual, to remove this whole box just to have an even shot at this one fastener. But I feel like you don't need to do that. All right. Let's see if we can fit a tool in to pull these two coils out and actually finally get to the spark plugs. All right, I'll show you in the service manual what they say about this, but this is the kind of tool to use. I'm using one from CTA, 7390, rather than one of these Chinesium type ones, but it's similar. If you look at the tip here, as you turn the knob, it's going to pull the plunger in, and it's going to expand. Right? And the idea is it's going to grab on the inside of the coil and help you get it to come out. So, I mean, both of these are fairly obstructed, but we'll start with this one. We're going to put this guy down into where, if we zoom in here a little bit, we're going to put him down into where the bolt was. And then we're going to turn it until it grabs. And when it feels like it's got a good grab on it, we're going to use the tool to pull the whole enchilada out. Just like this. And so there's one. So if we zoom out here, we've got one of these extracted. So that's the purpose of this tool. And then if we get a flashlight here, we look down in this well. If I don't wash you out with the glare, there's our prize. First of 6 spark plugs. We're going to go ahead and pull these other 2 coils out and get us to the same spot, and then I'll show you what we're replacing it with, and then we can put it all back together and start this fun even better on the driver's side. All right, now for the hard one. We got the outer 2. Now we just got this one. I'm positive even with all this obstruction, we can get this to come off. I'm going to block your view for just a moment here because I want to have enough control over this that we don't have it like let go and we pull up on any of these sensor wires. For some reason, this one is just being stubborn. Super stubborn. There we go. All right. He was just stuck in there. All right. Now to extract him with all this obstruction, I'm going to twist him so that we can get him out like this. And that's it. We're not going to have to remove any other wiring. Now we can get all 3 spark plugs, so let's go after those. All right, let's go extract these plugs now. You're going to need a 14 millimeter 12-point super thin wall socket for this. And preferably, it'll have a magnetic tip to it or a rubber tip to hold the plug so we can extract it. Okay. This yellow cream you see on here is the factory style of silicone paste, a dielectric type of material. So all we're looking on here with these plugs as we take them out, if we kind of zoom in on the tip, we're just trying to see if we see any evidence of oil burning. We can see very clearly that even after nearly 40,000 miles, our tip is still present, hasn't burned off. Let me get that where you guys can see up against this heat shield background. Sometimes what you'll see is this has burned away, particularly if there's any kind of oil burning situation. And we don't see any chalky deposits. This looks fairly normal for the mileage. So we'll just pull out the remaining 2 on this side so we can restart putting everything back together. So let me pull those out and I'll show you what we're replacing them with. All right, we got all 3 of these plugs out. What I want you to notice is, and I'll show you on the plugs in a minute, you can see a little bit of rust. Even though this is an aluminum head, right? There's rust on these plugs coming up on 40,000 miles. So what you're seeing inside these spark plug wells is rust dust. We got to get that out. We don't have to, worry extensively about it, but I will try to get some of it out. And where that's coming from, if I go grab one of the plugs here, is right here at the base. There's this little washer. And the base of the threads, you can see we've got some corrosion debris. At least it really appears to be corrosion debris. I can't imagine what else it would be because it's a fine brown dust. It's all over the base of the thread. So we're going to stick a little bit of a rag with some oil in there to get that up, and then we'll be ready to put the new ones in. So all I do to deal with this kind of corrosion in a wheel well and something like that, I take a little bit of 3-in-1 oil, a little piece of a shop rag, run it along the top of the spark plug well, and then twist it down into the corrosion while keeping the hole plugged. Just have to do this a couple of times and we'll get all that dust out of there. Now I was trying to show you before on the plug, but it's just not easy to move it, but that corrosion is coming from the base in between this sealing washer and the body of the spark plug. This is just another reason why Audi engineers wanted these plugs swapped out at this mileage interval. All right, so you can see this technique can get all of that kind of debris out of there. So don't put the new plugs in until it's squeaky clean like this. All right, what are we replacing them with? This 2022 vehicle is still under factory warranty, so we're only going to use factory parts. We're going to use a Volkswagen Group 06M 905 606F plug in this 3-liter engine. These are made in Japan. That's a fairly good indicator that the OEM manufacturer on these plugs is probably NGK. You don't need to do anything with the gap on any of these. These plugs, if they're not counterfeit, should look like this. They should have this piece protecting them. They should be clearly marked VWAG, and there you go, NGK. So that's the OEM supplier. But again, while it's under warranty, what I tell folks that own vehicles like this that I work on, just keep it all OEM so they have no excuse to deny you a warranty claim if that ever happens. So I'm going to clean the other two spark plug welds like I showed you. We're going to put these 3 in, and I'll go over the torque value, and we'll reassemble everything on this side, go over the torque values. Use the magnet on the socket to hold this in place, and then thread it in by hand. Remember, you got a steel threaded plug going into an aluminum alloy head. And we're just going to hand tighten this in until it gets snug. Okay, once it's snug, we'll come back later and torque it. We'll do that to the other two, and then we'll come back. All right, let's go over the torque information for the spark plugs. It turns out on Irwin that the pages for this are missing, at least at the time I'm doing this video. I had to actually write to Audi tech support directly and have them give me some of these missing pages manually. So the first one here we're talking about on the 3-liter TFSI, 6-cylinder. There's 2 types of spark plug torques that are going on here. For the one we have on the model year we're working on, this is one of the plugs we pulled, right? We need to see if it's an M12 or an M14. It's really handy to have something like this where you can check stuff like that. And as it turns out, the plugs that we have pulled out of this engine are M12 by 1.25. And so now that we know they're M12, we can look at the torque value and see that it's actually a range here from Audi. 23 Newton meters plus or minus 3 Newton meters. So what they're saying is anything from 20 Newton meters to 26 Newton meters is okay. I have a personal preference for 25. You can use anything in this range, but what we'll be using today in this job I'm doing is 25 Newton meters. So we're supposed to see information here about where you put the grease and to what extent you apply it, right? So grease the sealing hose, which they're showing down here, which is what they call the boot. Normally in American cars you'd call this a boot. Audi calls it a hose of the ignition coil, all around with silicone paste, 1 to 2 millimeters thick. Now they tell you to go to the electronic parts catalog, the EPC, for the particular paste to be used. I couldn't track this down in time to do this repair for the owner, so we're going to use something aftermarket, but if I find what this is supposed to be, I'll run the part number down in the video description, and I'll put a link to the picture of this part up here. This step, I would tell you, is critical with this particular design of coil, because when we get to it, you're going to see that we have to use a tool to get these extracted. And so this serves not just a waterproofing task on this particular model engine, but as a lubricant task. You need that lubricant to hold up to the heat so that when you get ready to pull these coils, they slide off easier. There's a little blurb down here from Audi saying that the use of an incorrect lubricant increases the risk of destroying the ignition coils. So, you know, in general, I always do try to use OEM lubricants along with tools and parts. What they're trying to tell you here, though, is don't go spraying some type of petroleum-based compound on here because it will deteriorate the boot. You got to use a silicone paste type technology. So that's what we're going to use today in the video. But there's a specific formula that Audi uses that if I ever had to do this in the future, I would try to track down. All right, guys, all 3 plugs are installed, hand tightened. Now we're going to come in here with a torque wrench and we're going to torque them down to 25 Newton meters. Each one. And no tighter than that, because it's steel into an aluminum head. And no anti-seize, because as Audi will tell you, that interferes with achieving the correct torque specification. Now we're going to put the coils back in. Going to endeavor to put them back in the order we remove them. It's very important we spruce up the silicone paste that was in here. This yellow type that was put on the assembly line is not what I'm going to be using. I'm just going to be using a white, clear, I guess you could say, type of silicone dielectric grease. The only purpose of this material is to prevent water intrusion getting down into the spark plug. And I'm just going to do the same thing for the other two. We'll get the bolt fingered tight on all of these, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the torque value on that. All right, as I put the second one in here, I realized I didn't point something out to you guys, at least on a genuine OEM coil unit. If we zoom in here, you can see, if I can get something to point with here, I don't know what I did with my Larius. You can see there's a little arrow on this boot. And you can see there's another arrow on the housing of the coil. And the service manual, I'll show you in a minute, tells you that you got to make sure these two arrows are pointing at each other before you reinstall the coil. This boot can twist a little bit, and it's important that it has not twisted out of alignment. All right, these T30s that hold the coil, they get torqued to 9 Newton meters. All right, one side done on this engine. Again, 9 Newton meters on these T30s for the coils. Also, 9 Newton meters on the T30s holding the coil ground wires. You'll notice we've got every connector reinstalled with the safeties re-enabled on each connector that we pulled out, including this one that was all the way in the back here. So we're done at this point. We're ready to reinstall this ducting and move on to the driver's side. Okay, when you put this ducting back in, this part of the clamp has got to stay in this recess area on this end, and it's got to stay in this recessed area on this end. All right, we're all done. The ducting's back in. There is a torque value on this size of a clamp in the Audi service manual. It's 3.4 Newton meters on both of these 7 millimeter head clamps. All right, so now let's go back over and review what we did here. So I showed you that you had to remove that piece. We removed one of these, but the other one we ended up not doing, and we were able to complete the job. We ended up pulling this off the 2 rubber bushings with the little ball studs. We ended up disconnecting the 3 coil connectors. We ended up disconnecting only 2 of the ground lines that attach to them. And then we removed this sensor connector, this one, and this one. And then we ended up also removing a couple over here that it didn't even mention to get this to work for us without having to do all of it. So now we are done with the driver's side. We're about to start, the passenger side. We're about to start the driver's side. So what they tell you on the driver's side is you've got to remove the engine control module and kind of get it out of the way. You do not have to disconnect it. And then they go through the procedure for the coolant reservoir. We're going to have to disconnect this line, this connector, remove these 2 fasteners so that we can release this catch and push this out of the way. And that's what all of these pictures and documentation are, is just so that we can get this out of the way. And then similarly on the driver's side, we got another one of these wiring ducts that are held on likely by a ball stud, but it does, they call it a ball pin, so I guess maybe I should use what they're saying. But this one also has a retaining latch. And so what they're trying to show you is there's a latch here, and you'll look at it when we get on that side, that has to be moved in order for this duct to be released. And then on this side, it'll have the same kind of attachment that we showed on the passenger side. And then we're going to have to do the same thing where we pull off the 3 coil connectors, and it looks like we're probably going to have to go get the ground lines too. Not sure until we get over there. There's definitely at least something connected over here that is probably going to have to be freed up. And that is all they tell you. I showed you already the official tool for this, which is a T10-530 from Audi. But I showed you the CTA version that I'm using. I'll put a link in the description. Highly recommend it over the Chi-Com and Chinesium shit that you might find. It'll work more than once. They talked about removing that T30 and using that tool after you tighten it to remove the coil. So I already showed you all of this. And they use that tool to pull the coil out. I talked to you about the fact that these arrows have to be kept in alignment, right? So they make sure to let you know the arrow markings on the spark plug connectors and on the ignition coil must point to each other as shown. So we'll just make sure we had that set up right. They stress the need to put some silicone paste around the very tip, just like you see here that I showed you. And then you push it on evenly. Do not use any impact tools. Everything's done by hand on this vehicle for this particular procedure. And then the torque values, the number 10 bolt that holds the coil in is 9 Newton meters that I showed you. And the ones that hold these ground lines of the coils, they're all also 9 Newton meters for all 6 of them. And then I also showed you that the types of clamps, what we have on the front ducts are 9 millimeters wide, and those get a 3.4 Newton meter torque value with a 7 millimeter socket. So at this point, we are ready to proceed to the driver's side. This is a little bit of information on the engine control module, the ECM. It's not really a big deal. There's a couple of plastic clips I'll show you in a minute, and then we can get that to pop out. And then I think this is the last thing we're going to look at from the service manual. Yeah, those clips are right here at the top. So we're just going to lift them up like you see. And then the whole ECM is that blue piece. It'll come out. It's got 2 retainers at the bottom. It'll just kind of rock forward. Then we'll lift it out and we'll move it towards the driver's side to get it out of the way. And that is it for what we're doing here. So let's go take a look at the driver's side. All right, we're here on the driver's side. Very different, but as you saw in the service manual. So here's the ECM. Here's the reservoir tank. What they were talking about on the ECM are these clips here. This guy and this guy. If we lift up on those two at the same time while trying to grab the aluminum cooling fins, we can get this to come out, and they just want you to get it where you can move it, just like that. On this, there's the 2 T30 fasteners they were showing. Here's the electrical connector. This particular coolant line is one where you have to lift up on this little retaining pin in order to be able to pull it off. And then this clip over here, we put the camera over here, right? I don't know if you guys can see that, but that is a squeeze pin underneath. It's holding it to this bracket. And so that's what we're going to have to navigate next. That'll get this stuff moved over, and then you can see we have another one of these wiring ducts obstructing our access to the ignition coils. And then, where's my flashlight? Remember, the service manual pointed out that there's a release clip on this side. And I think that's that guy right there, because that's the only thing that looks close to where the service manual picture was that moves. And I think if we activate that, we'll be able to get it to come off this side. And then this side has the same kind of rubber cushion or rubber grommet on a ball stud, ball pin they call it. And that should get this out of the way. And then we'll just have to fight with the ground lines for these coil connectors. So let's get situated to go after that. It's getting kind of cloudy here, so I want to make sure we get this done before it rains. All right, let's get into this. The cloud cover has moved on us, so we're going to have a lot more glare. Let's see if we can get this piece separated. So if we kind of zoom in again, and we remember we had this little clip here. Try to find a way to illuminate it for you guys, right? So I had this little clip, and I think all we have to do is move that forward from that service manual shot, and this should release on this side. And it does. And then this side should be like the passenger side, where it should be able to get 2 fingers under here and get it off of the ball mount, and it does. Okay. All right, so we're just going to like look for each obstruction as we get it. So now we got some tension on this sensor. It didn't even mention it to us, but let's go ahead and disconnect that one. I'm going to again use some of our CRC electrical silicone. And we're going to loosen up this little safety piece here. Get it going where it's nice and happy. And then we're going to see if we can give it a squeeze and remove it. Now this one, there's like a little shield behind it, so I can't get a good grip on it. I'm going to try to have to get some upward force on it while I squeeze it in. Of course, he's not cooperating. See if I can use my finger so I can get more feeling of, there we go. All right, it just wasn't going in enough with the pry bar. All right, and the next thing we've got some tension on is this little wiring harness clip that's just like a Christmas tree connector into the engine area. And then there's another sensor down here, but let's not worry about that one yet. Let's see what this did for us. All right, so we can actually see a coil now. All right, so this cooling line, service manual wanted us to remove it from up on top here. Sometimes I find that you just have to remove these little retainers all the way. Boy, that guy is stuck on there. I don't know if I can get any leverage. I need to get a tool where I can get some leverage. Let me see if I can find a plastic pry tool. All right, so we can see the clear piece of the nipple sticking through here. And there's not much on this black connector on the top and the bottom holding it on, right? So it's going to be on the fragile side, so we just don't want to force it. And a little bit of residual pressure in here. Let me get a paper towel. That's a good sign that we get some pressure out of it. There we go. Okay. Nothing broken. You got to go slow, folks, in order not to spend extra money. All right, so I don't think actually disconnecting this and shifting it is going to help. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe at some point we're going to need to get our hand under here. But right now it seems like it's a bigger problem in order to be able to get this lifted up more. So I actually feel like I would want to move this other cooling hose. I see it sitting in a little clip here. Let me just try getting it out of this little retaining clip right there so that I can kind of get a little bit of room here and then get a feel for what's holding it on this side. All right, so on this side, let's go ahead and pull the coil connector. So they've got a little safety as well, just like we did on the passenger side. If you zoom in here, just going to take this little baby pry bar and we're going to work that open. on these two, and then we're going to squeeze and wiggle. All right, there's that one disconnected. Man, you're going to have to love obstruction to work on this. Okay, so we got those two disconnected. Did that help us? A little bit. A little bit. I feel like at this point we could get that one out. We are not at a point where we can get these other two. And I feel like this needs to come up. So what's going on down here? A large harness. This large harness is going into a sensor here and a sensor there. And then it forks off to another sensor here in the front. I really don't want to start disconnecting all of this unless we absolutely have to. And in the back here, I think we're going to have to remove this sensor and this sensor and this sensor. That's everything on this end. So we got one here, and one right here. This one and the one in the back is the same type of safety as this one. And then this guy down here is the little white type that we saw on the passenger side. What I'm going to try and do is see if that'll let me pull this up a little bit from this direction. So let me go ahead and do that. I don't know if we'll be able to get the camera in here for all of these. Let's go try to pull these sensors out. It's basically the same deal as we did with this one. All right, so this is the guy in the back. Like I said, he's the same type as the one in the front. And this guy here, you can see, is the same deal as well. This one down here I said was the white type, so we had to push it up. And I'm just about to go in and get him. Give him a squeeze and wiggle him out. All right, so that's that type. And so I think this helped us, but it's still not enough. And so unfortunately it means we are going to have to move this out of the way the service manual was suggesting. So if I pull that page back out, what they were trying to tell us that they recommended that we do, right? If you remember, I showed you this before. They wanted us to disconnect this and this. And we disconnected this because I knew this was in the way. But they also want us to pull this. So let's see how this goes. This is a connector that I don't recognize. I guess you just kind of lift up a little bit and it unhooks. And then they wanted us to pull these two T30s. And the reason they want you to pull all of this is they want you to take the coolant reservoir and kind of move it up and out of the way, because they want you to take these two T30s that are holding this bracket. And you're going to take this bracket off so you can get your hand under here, which is the only way we're going to be able to get those coil ground wires disconnected. So let's go ahead and do this. I'll put this back where it won't blow away, so we keep occasionally getting a little gust of wind over here. And let's grab our T30. And let's go ahead and pull these. I don't know, you might be able to get away just taking the one that attaches to the actual bracket off, but we'll go ahead and do it by the book. There's this one and this one over here. feels like these are going into a nylon washer or something. I don't know. It just feels like this constant torque the whole way. This would be pretty hard for the electric ratchet I have, so we're just going to do it this way. It doesn't really ease up until you get right near the end. All right. Now with that out of the way, there's this little plastic connector. If we look at the front here, we're just going to push in and lift up. So we're going to push in and lift up. Easier said than done, right? There we go. All right. Now, with this kind of out of the way, we can come in here and we can go after these T30s that are holding this bracket. I'm going to use a small swivel for that. So, if you guys come in from the front by the headlight here, you can see, if we zoom in, we've got there's one right there. Even though there's a ton of sun out here, it might be no light down there. We got one right there at the top, and then we've got one right there at the bottom. So that's what we're going to go try to get now. Without dropping the socket. I don't know if I like using this particular setup with the swivel because I'm not getting a good head-on hit on this. Try something smaller. See if I can get my hand under here. Negative. Let me figure out what kind of a setup I can get in here to get these two bolts, because we're going to need to be able to torque them back up when we put them back. So I want to see if I can get something a little bit shorter. All right, so guys, what I end up doing here, I can get my finger back here to keep the T30 on the fastener, and I've just got like a 5-inch extension, and I'm just working it off manually. At some point, I might want to just bungee this guy up a little bit out of the way, but I think this setup will work fine for getting these two out. So let's go ahead and pull these bolts, and we'll bring you back when we get them out. All right, so I'm using a palm ratchet once you get this guy part way. And I'm trying to put my hand back here so it doesn't fall down into the Never Never Land. There's that one. And we got this bungeed up out of the way temporarily. And then this top one, same deal. After we've gotten it loosened up part way. There's the top fastener, and then there's this bracket that we were after. And now with this out of the way, now we can finally come in here with a 1/4-inch ratchet. And we can put a T30 1/4-inch on here, and we can go get those ground lines, and that should allow us to finally lift this out of the way. So let me go find where they're located, and then I'll show you. All right, so we're going to be after this ground wire and this one over here, where my finger's bouncing up and down. So that guy and that guy. I can't get you guys in here because I'm going to completely block the view getting in there with that small wrench, but those are the two T30s that we're going to pull on this side. All right, so I'm going to try to get these out by hand. I've loosened them up with the 1/4 inch T30. I know you guys can't see anything, but just give me a moment. Right. There's the one at the very back. And then very similarly, like so, here's this lead. Now he's going to face the back on this one. This one here, you guys can probably see on this side, right behind these brake lines. This one, the lead is going to face to the front like that. All right, so with those two out and all those sensors disconnected, can we finally get our hand in here and get the last coil connector off? So we've got this one right here that goes in at an angle. I'm just going to release the safety on it. Locking clip, whatever you want to call it. Give it a squeeze and a tug. Okay, so at this point, I can definitely get that coil out. I think I can also get the middle one out. This last one is still problematic. So what's holding up the last one? I mean, we can clearly see the ground wire now, right down there where my finger's pointing, but I don't think that is the only thing holding us up here. It might be. All right, let's take this last ground wire out and come back and see if that helps us any. All right, so studying this, I think what will help us get this tilted out enough is we've got to be able to pull this big piece of harness going into the PCM. And so we've got these two clips that are one-way metal clips that grab onto this metal bracket that's part of this guy here, right? So, I guess there's a couple of ways you could go at it. You could just take the whole bracket off, but what I'm going to try and do is just get the clips to let go. So, I'm just going to kind of wiggle the top one off because he looks small. So if I can give him a little bit of persuasion. We don't want to break anything. And what I'm trying to do here, maybe it's easier for you to see on this one, I'm just trying to get a little pry bar in here to see if I can get this to let go enough to slide it off. Let me see if I can have another tool like this and do two sides at once. All right, I'm going to try to come in on this side with a pocket screwdriver and on this side with a baby pry bar. Just trying to see if I can coax this guy enough to let go. Very stubborn. Of course, you normally want the connector not to let go, but all right, that's not working. So my next thought is, can I get the plastic piece of the connector off of the metal? So let's try that. So just trying to loop the plastic piece off the metal clip, because the metal clip's what's stubborn here. There we go. All right. So that'll work. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Yeah, all this because we want to change spark plugs, guys. This last one, having trouble getting it to release. Try coming in from this side. There we go. All right. Now, what did that do for us? Well, that let me pull this out of the way more. Now I can do two of them. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to go ahead and try to do the first two of these. That'll give us 5 out of 6. I'm just going to come in here with the T30 on the ignition coil retaining bolt. There's that one. And straight shot to this one. Get these tools out of here. And now we have enough room to get our coil puller in here, like we used on the passenger side. Remove these two coils and pull these two plugs. What a pisser. Is that one? Let me go get our coil puller tool. I think I laid it down on the other side of the vehicle. All right, you guys remember this tool, right? So same thing we did on the passenger side. I'm not necessarily going to show you every single one of these, but get this guy tightened up on this easiest to access one. And then figure out how we can get under here and give them a pull. There we go. The service manual makes a tip, or states a tip about keeping the engine kind of warm for removing these coils. All right, so there's this guy. So with that out of the way, we can go after that plug. So we can find the best way to do that. All the obstruction we've got to deal with right here. Let's see, I thought I had a slightly shorter extension out here. It has gone on lunch break. There it is. Okay. Let's try this guy, see if this works better for this particular side. Yep, okay. I'm not necessarily going to show you guys removing all of these because you've seen how to take the plugs out. I will show you how we get to this last, most obscured one, and I will show you what they look like. Alright, it's getting a little bit easier to turn. We will switch to the palm ratchet. Coming out nice and squeaky. Yeah, I mean, we got this PCM in our way. We got this huge wiring harness in our way. And this is the easiest one to get to on this side. I thought I heard it quit squeaking, but I guess it's not yet done. All right, how about now? Okay. All right, same deal as the other side. This is all perfectly normal. Electrodes still intact. Just normal wear. I do not see as much corrosion under this sealing washer as we saw on the passenger side. Still can see some if we zoom in, right in there. Right there, 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 and there. But the rest of it doesn't look corroded. All right, let's move on to the middle one. All right, let's get this number 2 or this middle guy out. That's 2. 5 out, 1 to go. Okay, so this one I'm going to take a different extension because we've got this in our way. Just got to have a variety of tools here. She starts squeaking. I don't know if I showed you guys, but you know, the spark plug socket that you got to use here, it's a 14 millimeter, but it's a 12 point because you can see these NGK type plugs for these VW engines are 12 point, and then it's got a magnetic tip on it so that it'll hold this guy. This one is my favorite. This one is made by Lyle. I'll put a link in the description for you. All right, so again, this plug, same deal, just normal wear and tear. Nothing special, nothing to write home about. That's going to leave us just the real pisser guy over here. All right, we do see a shot to getting the T30 out. I think. Maybe right through here. Yeah. So we can get the bolt out that's holding it in place. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get my fingers in there. It'll be fun trying to get this one back in. But we can get him out. All right. Now we got to figure out how we can get the tool in here. What we've got going on here is we've got another harness on this end going to 1, 2, 3, 4 more sensors. We've got no slack on this. Let me study this a moment, guys, so if I can figure out how we can get the tool in here, whether we have to do more disconnecting to get this last one out or not. All right, with this hose this cooling line kind of fished out of the way, we can see we got a straight shot now to put the tool in here. And we get our finger underneath where it plugs in and give it a pull and a wiggle, 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 wiggle. And there, she's loose enough to come out. Now, this is the hard part. So it's loose, but we don't have enough clearance to bring it out that way. Can I twist it at all and bring it out this way? Because I really don't want to disconnect 5 more sensors. Survey says yes, you can. All right, all we want to make sure of when we do a maneuver like that is we don't mess up the alignment of those boot arrows that we talked about on the passenger side. Okay, so at this point, we got one more plug. And fortunately, we got a straight shot on the plug. Starting to squeak. So it should be able to hand remove it. Come on. There we go. All right, last one of this ordeal. Normal wear on the plug, no damage, much more corrosion that we can see along that sealing washer. All right, I'm going to get an inspection camera in there. We're going to clean it out just like we did on the passenger side. I'm not going to show you that again. We'll come back after we're ready to torque down the replacements. All right, I don't know if I showed you guys the actual tool that I use for this, but it's just a remote grabber, right? So all I do is I take a little wad of shop towel and I get it in the grabber, and that's what I end up soaking with light oil to clean out these spark plug wells. All right, guys, just like we did on the passenger side, we want to get this squeaky clean down here before we put anything in. There's a little bit of something right on that top edge. We'll see if we can get that, but that might just be some staining on the wall itself. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's just something on the wall itself. All right, so now we're going to put in this plug here because this is our most difficult one. All right, as soon as it's snug, we're done. We'll torque it with a torque wrench later, and we're just going to keep going down these other two. All right, so I've done the back two, and we're just on this one on the front here to get torqued again to 25 Newton meters. And with that, we are done with the plugs, and we are ready to reinstall the coils. Remember, just like when we did the coils on the passenger side, as we put them back in, we're going to refresh the dielectric grease that sits inside. Remember, this guy here we're going to have to put in sideways, and then we can twist him. And then I'm going to get the other two put in the same way, and then we're going to start reassembling. We'll bring you guys back and review where we ended up in final torque values. All right, so where we're at, we've gone ahead and torqued to 9 Newton meters the 3 coil bolts. We've got our coil connectors back in. We've reinstalled the T30 coil grounding lead bolts and tightened them to 9 Newton meters also. We're going to snap this guy back in. We did connect back the sensor here. Here, we put this clip back in. We got that sensor down there. He's locked in. And we got this sensor, if we come on the front here, we got him back in as well. So at this point, what we're ready to do is get this coil, this coolant bracket put back in. And that guy is like this. All right, so he's going to sit like that. So let's go ahead and get those bolts started by hand. Actually, nope, not these. These dark ones are the screws that go on the reservoir. It's these lighter T30s that go there. All right, so if I can get these started by hand. All of these fasteners, I can't stress enough the importance of starting them by hand. All right, there's that one. And then I don't think you guys are going to be able to see anything with this one on the bottom. So let me go ahead and get this in here, and I'll bring you guys back when we're ready to put all this back together. All right. 9 Newton meters on these two T30 bolts holding this bracket is the best I could determine from the service documentation. It wasn't really clear for these particular fasteners on this bracket. All right, we want to get this guy back where he goes now. That in there, that in there. We've got this one here, hand start, and this one here that we're going to hand start. I also was not able to locate the specific torque value for these two. And then this coolant connector. Get this wedged back up into the lock position. Unlock position, I should say. And then get that on there. So let me just tighten these two down. This guy we're going to put back in his home. And we're just about done, folks. All right, guys, we've got this back in here. I did 9 Newton meters on both of these. Everything's looking good. What we're going to do at this time, we got the powertrain control module, or rather the engine control module, back in its home. Everything is clipped and tightened down. We're going to go ahead, have the owner go in and give it a test fire, and let's see if she fires up. Perfect. Sounds great. Not hearing anything unusual. at all. She's idled out. Let's go ahead and shut her off. All right, this job took way longer than I would have expected. So we're going to go ahead and put the engine cover back on. We're going to send the owner on their way. We'll have them swing by at another time to reset the inspection due message on the cluster, and I'll show you that in the next clip I add to this before we end this video. All right, guys, let's reset this inspection due indicator on the cluster. This spark plug job we did took way longer than I thought, so I had to give the car back to the owner, and he's brought it back at a later date for us to do this. I want to show you how this contrasts with the oil change interval. So if we come over to the MMI and make sure we're on the home screen here, vehicle, and there's 2 pages to this, but we're after settings and service intervals, and we've got 2 things here, the oil change interval and this inspection interval. And we only want to clear this one. We want to leave this one alone because it's not time yet for this one to be done. The reset on the MMI is only going to clear the oil change anyway. So we're going to leave this alone, and we're going to do this with a scan tool. Now you can use the VW ODIS tool, but what I'm going to be using is a tool called VCDS. And I'm just running it here on my Windows Panasonic ToughPad. It's got a vehicle control interface that plugs into the diagnostic link connector under the dash, or the OBD2 port, if you will, where it's going to get its power and be able to communicate with the module. So I'm going to go plug that in. We're going to come back, and I'll show you how to reset this. All right, so I've got this ToughPad sitting here on the footwell, and hopefully it'll be out of the glare for you guys to see. So normally on VCDS, you could just go into this feature called SRI Reset, and it would do a little dance here with the instrument cluster talking to it. And once it finishes communication, it's going to give us a view of everything it interrogated. So you can see there's all these different what are called adaptation channels and descriptions and values, mileage and days, different things that are being tracked. And on top, for reset options, we either have a reset ESI/oil for North America or a reset fix in ESI/inspection for North America. If I pick the first one, the only thing it does is set a 0 to this first channel, 12,960. If I go down through here on the scroll bar, nothing else is changed. If I pick the second one, then it adds these 2 adaptation channels, 12,980 and 12,981, which are distance driven and time since the last inspection. So these are the 2 we definitely want to get reset to get rid of that second warning on the cluster. However, I'm concerned that it's also resetting this first one for the oil service. And since the owner doesn't want that touched, I'm inclined to do this manually. It's possible that that wouldn't hurt anything, but just to be safe, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it manually. So I'm going to select the control module manually. It's going to build up the list of modules. I'm going to pick 17, which is the instrument cluster. It's going to do a little communicating, and then when these buttons down here become active, I'm going to pick adaptation. And now from here, I'm going to select those 2 channels that we saw, 12,980 and 12,981, manually. All right, so there's 12,980 and 12,981. Let's see if I can grab, well, I got 12,981. We'll go with that guy first. We're going to set him to 0. So it was previously 738 days. And now when I say to do this, it's going to change it to 0 days. And again, this is 12,981. So I'm going to hit the Do It button. It's going to ask me, are you sure that you want to change it from 738 to 0? I'm going to say yes. It accepted the request. It's going to reread the channel, and now it's set to 0. So now I'm going to select the other one. If I can grab it, this tough pad is got a real small touch interface. There we go, 12980. And now on this one, same thing. I want to reset it from 37,300 to 0. Okay, so from 37,300 kilometers to 0 kilometers. And 12980. Do it. You sure? Yes. Accepted the request. Okay. Now we should be done. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go all the way back. All the way back. I'm going to go back into the SRI reset feature. Let it recommunicate with the cluster. And now, when I scroll down and look at those two values, zero kilometers and 0 days. So we've reset that. So now, what we should be able to do, if we pull the camera back a little bit and zoom back out, if I turn the key off and I turn the key back on, so I do not have...
we're getting full brightness.
I do not have the... do not have the warning on the dash, excuse me. And if I come over to the MMI, and I'm going to go back, I'm going to go back into this again. Yes, so my next inspection is in 20,000 miles, but my oil change interval has been left alone. So we did exactly what we wanted. We reset this, and we left that alone. So that's how I chose to do this with VCDS. You might choose to do it with a different scan tool. Just understand a lot of them will reset both of these at the same time. In this particular example, we wanted to leave the first one alone and only reset the second one. So that concludes this video. I hope this maintenance video for Audi SQ5s helps you out. If you got questions or comments, go ahead and leave it below and I'll try to help. If this did save you some time and money, I'd appreciate you paying it forward by hitting that like button. And as always, thanks for watching.